Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, your soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
You're at a family gathering. Everyone's talking, laughing, and then someone makes a comment. Maybe about your life, your choices, your past. And the person who makes the comment is a family member you have forgiven for a rude comment they said about you a couple months ago. And you thought you've moved on. And the comment that they made was very subtle. No one else reacted, but you felt it. That tightness in your chest, that shift in your energy. And in an instant, you're not just in this moment anymore. You can forgive someone and still feel something tighten in your chest when you hear their voice, their comment, even their name. You can say you've moved on, and what you did try to do a few months ago with what they said to you back then, and still replay what they did in the now. The word, the nonverbal, the sense that there was an undertone to what they were saying. So here's the real question. What if resentment isn't about what they did at all, but about what you're still holding on, unknowns to yourself, within you? Hi, I'm back with another key to soul progress. And this is one that goes a little bit deeper than most people realize. And I'm calling this Release Residual Resentment. Because resentment is not just something you feel. It is something you carry. And it's so subtle. That's why the residual. You may have gotten rid of a lot of the resentment you had against that person or that family member or that situation that you found yourself in. But there can be this lingering residual resentment. And often, it's not from one moment. It's from what was thought to have been resolved, but quietly stayed with you. Like a sticky, it sticks onto you. So what we're going to be talking about in this episode is that we want to dive a little bit more into how resentment forms and stays. This is important for spiritual individuals. Because we think we're through something, and then we realize we still kind of holding on something from this person or this particular interaction that we did have. We're going to look at how resentment forms and stays, even moving into the subconscious layers of self, how it begins to shape your identity without you realizing it, and a simple, powerful way to release it in real time. When something hurts you, let's begin there. You may talk about it, reflect on it, even decide to move on. But that does not always mean it has left you. It is no longer there, present, the internal workings of you. Because unresolved emotional experiences don't disappear. And like I said earlier, we can resolve a lot of it, but if we are not alert and attuned to how our inner world operates in our soul substance and what it needs and what we're trying to clear in order to be a clearer outpost of God's divinity within us. What happens is when we have these different degrees, I will say, of unresolved emotional experiences, they settle in us. So I'm not saying that we don't resolve some of it, but there may be like 10 or 20% that settles because we think we just can move on and we're done with it. You always hear the saying, I'm done, I moved on. Well, when it comes to resentment, it's a little bit stickier. And they or you or whoever the individual is do move on. But what goes on just below awareness in the subconscious layers of self, which we don't look at, we don't really talk about, but I am today. And they remain, this momentum of energy, this residual resentment remains there, quietly active, like sediment at the bottom of the clear water. When everything is calm, you don't see it. But the moment something stirs the water, it rises up. Or like a bruise you forgot about until something lightly touches it, and suddenly the pain is there again. Not new, just not fully healed. Resentment builds over time with different experiences, different situations that happen to us. For example, a comment that felt dismissive, a moment you were overlooked, a time you weren't heard, an expectation that wasn't met. And each one may seem small, but when not processed fully, they accumulate. Like unopened emails in an inbox, at first just a few, then more, until eventually it's not about one message anymore. It's about everything that's been left unattended. Now here is where it becomes more important for you to think about as we're talking about residual resentment. And I've talked about a year ago, talking about looking at resentment. You may want to go back and listen to that episode because it lays the foundation to what I'm talking about today and moving in a little bit more depth into the psychological understanding of what happens with resentment and also how it moves us, and we don't think about it, into identity formation. The mind is always trying to make meaning. So it begins to connect experiences. And over time, it forms patterns. This is what the mind does. It looks for patterns because we know in terms of brain neurology is that efficiency and efficient use of energy becomes important for the brain. So with that in mind, this always happens to me. It's maybe a thought that keeps on coming up for you because it's kind of accumulated and pulled things together that you're now saying, this always happens to me. Or you may be saying something like, I'm not respected. Or another common one that women will say sometimes is, I'm not valued here. I feel unappreciated. And then something subtle but powerful occurs. The experience becomes interpretation. Interpretation becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. And at that point, you are no longer just remembering what happened. You are seeing life through it, through a particular lens that is formed. And resentment is no longer something you feel occasionally. It becomes something that shapes how you respond. Just think for a minute. When you experience the resentment, you can understand how it can accumulate over time unknowns to you. It's not like you're trying to intentionally accumulate these energies of resentment, but it just kind of builds and builds. And as I said earlier, even though you've moved past it, it doesn't mean that the resentment in some of the 10% or 20% is not still there in regards to the particular person or situation that you felt this resentment because of certain actions they were doing towards you or how things ended up. So let's bring this into light through a real life experience, particularly in the workplace, where a woman quietly carries resentment without realizing how much it has built. So Suzanne, we've been talking about, and she prepared thoroughly for a team meeting. She contributed ideas, supported the direction, and did the work behind the scenes. And in the meeting, a colleague spoke and presented the direction as if it had come from him. So in public, she didn't know what to do because now she's in a meeting in which she hears a colleague who she trusted is now saying some things that she shared in a smaller meeting that is a little bit shocking. And in fact, there was no acknowledgement of where he received or got his information from. And she started to feel it. She felt it in her heart. And she also felt it in her stomach. But what she told herself was, let it go. We have that saying, let's let it go. Let sleeping dogs lie. Whatever phrase you use. Then it happened again. She did let it go the first time. And it happened again. And it happened another time. She's not saying anything. She's just kind of letting it go, quote unquote. And over time, it wasn't just about credit or recognition. It became meaning. And the meaning that she was attaching to this was, I'm not being seen. My voice doesn't matter. This is how accumulation turns into identity. And not because of one event that she could let go, but because of the repeated, unresolved meaning attached to it. Now, let's move to, I'm going to come back around to the situation that has occurred with Suzanne, but let's kind of talk about another situation. And this is with Elena. And Elena had a difficult conversation months ago. Something was said in frustration. It hurt. They talked with her partner. Apologies were made. And she believed she had moved on. But later, during a small disagreement, her reaction was immediate, intense, stronger than the moment required. And afterwards, she wondered, why did I respond so strongly? Because it wasn't just about now. It was about what never fully left. And we have to realize that unreleased emotional energy doesn't disappear. It waits. And when something feels familiar, guess what? It returns. Maybe not in the same intensity, but it returns in subtle ways, in the residual way. And from a higher spiritual perspective, resentment binds your energy to the past. And the soul is not meant to stay there. It is meant to evolve, to expand, to move. And when resentment is held, energy is pulled backwards. Awareness becomes narrowed in, narrow vision. Peace becomes conditional. And most importantly, your inner state becomes dependent on what someone else did, which limits growth. Because true growth requires your energy to be available now. And when we're partitioning our energy by saying it doesn't matter or we moved on, we really haven't. What we've done is just try to avoid maybe a conflict that we really didn't want to have. But there are ways in which we can manage these situations more actively. And here's something that may be a tool you can be able to use in real time. And I call it free. F-R-E-E. So feel is first, the F. Notice what is arising without pushing it away. We're too quick that if something feels uncomfortable, we just want to move past it, as opposed to be observant of it, be interested of it. We're more than our feelings. Feelings are data for us to be able to use. The alert, something's up. Let me observe this and see. And the R represents recognize. Recognize if it's familiar to you. This is not just in this moment. You may say, why? This has happened to me before. Let me try to connect the dots and see why it bothersome. Is bothersome or troublesome so much for me? And the E is energize forward, not backwards, but return your attention and response to the present. I see that this is related to this over here when this person said this to me. A couple of years ago, they sent that same thing or similar type of thing to me. I just let it go then, or I had a conversation even with them and felt like I let it go. But when a situation is happening to us in real time, then we can have a simple way, a simple strategy or tool we can use, such as free, F-R-E-E. You feel it, you recognize that is familiar to you, you expand, you don't have to do anything in the moment. Then you energize for it by returning your attention and response to what you want to do in the now. And at that family gathering that I talked about earlier, you feel it rise, for example. Instead of reacting, this is why I think you can be able to utilize something that's easy to remember and to be able to do. So think about it from this standpoint. Feel like Rebecca or Suzanne. Feel something is here because it's rising in me. I feel it in my chest, or I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my jaw tightening. Recognize. This is connected to something else. It's connected to something that's happened before. Expand. I can choose differently my response moving forward. So you don't get caught up in the past. You get more intentional about who you want to be now. And that's the energize. Respond from who you are now, not the past, but now as you're walking a spiritual path, becoming more centered in your values and what's really important to you and what would be more purposeful. That is release in action when we can free ourselves that way. And there is one more form of resentment. It's quieter, but just as powerful. We have to be aware of. And here's an example. And it relates to unresolved situations. Claire found herself thinking about a friendship that ended years ago. And the way it ended, there's no closure, no final conversation, and the thoughts returned. What really happened? Did I misunderstand something? But eventually, she saw clearly. She wasn't searching for an answer anymore. She was holding on to the emotional connection. Closure is not always something you receive. Sometimes it is something you choose. We can choose when these old patterns or these old thoughts or relationships or friendships come up, realizing we need to put closure in our own self, in our own mind, and not feel as if we're holding on to pieces of unresolved emotional issues related to that person. That person has moved on. And you have to move on in your own mind and not allow it to cloud your inner world. your inner receptivity to your soul, and your soul tied to your Christ self, the Creator, the I Am presence. We want to clear those things. We want to ask for the releasing of ourselves from unresolved situations or people. We want to be able to free ourselves, to be truly an outpost of the Most High. Getting back to resentment. Resentment begins as something about the situation, the person, the actions that were done, or how we interpret those things. But over time, those interpretations, it becomes something within you. The question is no longer, what did they do? But, am I still carrying this? Am I still carrying this energy that may pull me down or scatter me or make me feel out of alignment with my highest self, my highest good, my Creator? The next time something rises within you that relates to a conversation, to something in the past that person said was not helpful, notice it rise in you. Feel the feeling. You don't mean you have to act on the feeling. But what you can do is pause and ask yourself, is this about what is happening now or what is still living within me? Because one keeps you in the past and the other returns you to yourself. And one of the things that we are trying to do is mop up, clean up, transmute, dissolve little acts and feelings of resentment. And resentment, we don't realize, can come in the form of bitterness, frustration, edginess. What you're literally trying to do is see this residual energy that may be under the umbrella of resentment for what it is. It no longer has to occupy space within you. You can be the person to transmute it and change it. That's why I gave you that short little way of thinking and understanding when it's showing its face. And that is free. Feel, recognize, expand, energize. Move yourself forward. Something to think about. Bye for now. And you can find my podcast episodes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and at JudithMLA.com.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.